Today we'll be going over APA format as well as the ChatGPT assignment. So to start, APA format is required for a lot of assignments that you'll have to do throughout this course. One, the ChatGPT assignment, also your group discussions that are due at the end of the semester. They won't be open until the end of the semester either. You need to use APA format for your book report and your research paper. You need to properly use in-text citations for both of these. And then depending on what you do for the book report, you might need to have a reference list. And for the research paper, you definitely need to have a reference list. These are some websites that you can use to understand how to use APA format correctly. Purdue has a great website cited here that has a menu of how to use APA format in multiple different aspects of your paper. So it'll have a tab for general format. It also has a tab for in-text citations, and also has a tab for reference lists. So in the presentation that I went through live, and that the recording was a little messed up, so that's why I'm re-recording it here. I went through that and walked through that. But you can check that recording because that recording process worked for going through those websites. But for the slides, it did not work, so that's why I'm going through this again. This is a great source. I recommend you use it. Just make sure you check everything that you're doing and make sure that it's correct in order for you to get full points on the papers. Other sources to use. So Texas Tech pays for access to multiple different research journals that give you access to research articles, which you need to use for the research paper. So if you go into Texas Tech Library and you go into A to Z database, you can find PsycInfo, which is the one that I recommend. It has a variety of concepts that it covers. So I recommend using that one. You can type your keywords for your topic in the search bar and find articles that are related, read through those abstracts and see if they fit what you want to do with your paper, and you'll be able to find that. And also there's Google Scholar, which I would recommend using. Again, for this slide, I recommend looking at the previous recording just to see the walkthrough and me using those websites and scrolling through and showing you all these specifics. But for this recording, I'm just going through the slides because that was not included in the recording that was posted earlier. For the book report, if you only cite your textbook, which you have to do, it's part of the requirements, it's in the grading rubric, specifically for the synthesis with course requirement. You have to use in-text citations when you cite information from your textbook. If you decide to use outside sources, which you're more than welcome to do, you'll have to include a reference list to have those outside sources available for me to look at, make sure they're good, and that you're referencing accurate information from those articles. You'll also need to use in-text citations for those references as well. Here's an example of a textbook reference. As you see here, a guilty but mentally ill verdict means that the defendant is guilty of the crime but displays a need for mental health resources. And now before you end this sentence, before you put a period, you are including an in-text citation. And since it's a textbook citation, you need to include page numbers. So we have two authors on our textbook. Both have the last name Bartal. So it's Bartal and Bartal, comma, 2021, which is the date of publication, comma, p dot the actual page number. Now, if you have multiple pages, so say it's information that's found in between page 182 and 185, you would do pp.182-185. Now, this second sentence contains information that is also found in the textbook, but since I included this reference, this in-text citation, in my first sentence, I don't have to cite it again for the rest of that paragraph. If you start a new paragraph, you need to include a citation. Now on the bottom here, we have what this citation would look like in the full reference list. Now, an important thing to mark with APA format is that the second line, or any line that is not the first line of a citation, needs to be indented. This is APA format, so make sure you do this for your entire reference list. For the research paper, you need a minimum of 8 sources. 5 of those have to be peer-reviewed. This means 5 of them have to be either scholarly articles or court cases, also can be legal documents. This reference list does not count towards the total page count, which is between 6 and 9 pages. And you need to make sure that for this assignment, you are correctly using formatted in-text citations. Here's an example of if you were to cite an article in text. We have, well, less common than other postpartum mood disorders, untreated postpartum psychosis is estimated to lead to a 4% risk of infanticide and 5% risk of suicide. Now, before I end this sentence, before I place that period down, I type in the citation. In parentheses, this paper only has one author, the last name being Nichols. So I write Nichols, comma, the date that it was published. Close the parentheses. Now for the rest of this paragraph, I'm not citing again, even though I'm talking about information from that article, I'm not citing again within that paragraph. Now we have a second paragraph here, and we are using information from this article again. Since it's a new paragraph and we haven't introduced the in-text citation for that article where we got this information from, we need to include an in-text citation again. So you can see that we do that. And down here is an example of what this citation is going to look like in the full reference list. We have the indentation of the second line. That's important for APA. Now for your ChatGPT assignment due this Friday, it's worth 20 out of the 100 points for your final research paper. And you can either open up a new Word document and complete it in that, or you can just type your answers within the Word document that is provided to you. Make sure that you sign up for ChatGPT if you haven't already. They are pretty good at getting accounts made quickly, but I would recommend doing this sooner than later. And then you also need to correctly cite ChatGPT on any assignment that you use, but also within this ChatGPT assignment. For this specific assignment, you only need to do the full reference. You don't need to do in-text citations. But in future assignments, if you use ChatGPT and include it in your main body, you need to use in-text citations. This website here, which I walked through in the other presentation, I recommend looking at that for all these interactive aspects, but for slides, I wanted to re-record, make sure everyone knows what I'm talking about when I'm saying things. I show you on that blog post by APA the correct way to cite ChatGPT in a full format, as well as in-text citations. I have an example of that as well. So for this part of the presentation, I did a walkthrough where we went to ChatGPT. We typed in this question for example purposes. I had, what is the relationship between schizophrenia and forensic psychology? And then it gave me a bunch of information, a lot of different subsections, and I was able to kind of be like, oh, maybe I'll go down this route and research this topic a little bit more. An example being risk and assessment, mental health and options for people who suffer from schizophrenia. Those are some examples of what Chat gave me and what I might consider going through. Then we also asked it to provide us with some research articles to discuss that topic. It may or may not give you research articles. If it does, make sure they're legit. It has a habit of giving you non-legit research articles. If it doesn't, then you want to type in, give me keywords to research this topic, and it will give you a good list of keywords that you can use to either put into Google Scholar or PsycInfo through Texas Tech Library to find articles that relate to your topic. So that is what I had for these slides. I do recommend going over the other presentation because that has more of like the walkthrough, me showing you the websites and how to use the websites, examples of how to edit your reference list to make sure it's APA format. A lot of walkthroughs in the other presentation, but for this presentation I wanted to make sure that people saw the slides as I was talking about them because that didn't correctly carry over in the previous presentation. So thank you. Have a good night.